about, I think she said her son at the time was about 10 years old. And she said it was all very casual. We were walking down the street, and he proceeded to point out the people with what he called extraterrestrial genes, and he would say 20%, 80%, 50%, 60%, or whatever. But it was very casual, and it was very normal to him. And she said to me, what on earth is he doing, saying things like this to me? Because a lot of the children, I'm telling you now, seem to know a lot more than we do. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. This is a drawing by Julian Finch, a gentleman who has experiences. And the reason I've shown you that is, if you can see, we've got the human side and the ET side. Many people with experiences experience a dual consciousness, a feeling of both being human and extraterrestrial. And for many of them, it's a huge conflict, and many of them really struggle being on this planet, and many of them want to bail, and I mean that quite seriously. But I want to explain about the fact that many of them have a sense of this extraterrestrial part of them. And this is one of the letters I got. I'm in my 40s. I started walking at 8 months old, talking in sentences by 10 months old, knew how to read at 2 years old, nobody taught me. I attended school at night. I had friends who walked through walls, became invisible, and we spoke telepathically. And I desperately wanted to go home. I'm not going to ask you and embarrass you and ask how many have felt like that in this audience, but I suspect a good number. James Basil is a gentleman in England who's in his late 20s now, who believes he's a star kid. And this is what he told me in a letter. Yes, I've always believed I was from elsewhere, and like I said, used to speak or write in a strange language in private. Sometimes even in front of my mum, I used to cry because I felt so different. I would tell her not to touch me, as it was dangerous, and I am not yours. I am one of them. And when the Greys used to leave, I'd get upset and believe they'd left me behind, which made me angry and upset. I have memories of being on a planet with golden buildings. Now, why would they come and say things like this? Richard Boylan is a psychologist, a researcher, behavioural scientist, and anthropologist, and has studied these children he calls the star kids. And this is what he says about them. A star child may be defined as a child of both human and extraterrestrial origin. The extraterrestrial contribution to the child's makeup may come from genetic engineering, from biomedical technology, and from telepathic consciousness linking. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that, which one 8-year-old actually called knowledge bombs in her head, which is the only way she could explain it. Star kids are psychically and metaphysically changed as a result of their own contacts with the visitors, or the visitors modifying their own parents' reproductive material. Now, when you get more and more people saying the same thing, you have to wonder why they're saying this, when the patterns keep coming up. And when you try very hard not to quantify it, it helps. But these children seem to have this telepathic downloading. They're highly intelligent. They often have a sense of healing abilities, an understanding of energy. They are confused by the primitiveness of Earth and their dense physical bodies. They also remember past lives, and this young man was only 5 when his mother tried to tell him about how the pyramids were made. And she talked about something we see in books, don't we? Hundreds of slaves dragging these huge, many-ton bits of stone and putting them one on top of the other. It does actually stretch most of our credibility, I think. This little boy, though, became extremely upset and agitated and said it's not true. He went on to explain that the pyramids were built by changing the density structure of objects, small or big, and then these stones were moved into position by levitation. He continued to say that once the pyramids were finished, a giant crystal was placed on the top and was used to conduct energy and transmit signals to other worlds. He also said one day people will learn of this, and a chamber and unknown seal will be found in Egypt to prove I'm right. He was 5 years old. Michael Oram is now in his 50s. And he wrote to me and said that at 4 years old, he said to his mother, "Mum, there's no such thing as death. The universe goes on for eternity. And it's not true we no longer play a part in the universe. We come back." I was too young, he said, to know the word reincarnation. And I shocked her by saying, "You're not my real parent in space, and something of incredible importance will happen on this planet, and it will affect all levels of consciousness. It will not happen in your lifetime, but it will in mine." My poor mother never forgot that conversation, he said, and Mike is now in his 50s, so something is still going to happen, or so he believes. This is from Pravda newspaper, September 2004. A Russian 7-year-old boy spoke about his life on Mars, its inhabitants, flights to Earth, the Martian civilization, megalithic cities, spaceships and flights to a planet called Earth, and a wonderful country called Lemuria, of which he knew in detail. The boy possessed exceptionally profound knowledge and was capable of narrating the entire history of Lemuria and the Lemurians, which he said ceased to exist 800,000 years ago, and they were 9 meters tall. This is a 7-year-old boy we're talking about. He also stated that people will find knowledge under the pyramids, not the pyramid of Cheops. It hasn't been discovered yet. Life will change once the Sphinx is opened, and the opening mechanism is behind the ear. He then spoke about the gifted kids, and they were called indigo kids, and he said he knew of them, and something was going to happen on Earth, and they are of great importance. They will be able to help people. Do you see the theme here? Can you see what's coming through? Bariska, again, could hold up his head in 15 days, spoke his first word when he was 4 months only old. At the age of 7 months, constructed his first sentence, had exceptional memory, and not only talked about Mars, but planetary systems and distant civilizations. Another Russian schoolgirl, 17. She's being investigated in Japan at the moment. Seems to be able to see right through you. Interesting. They're now investigating her because she seems to also know what's wrong with people before they manifest the illness. Another one of these amazing children, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. Star Kids. And those that have heard my talk before, there's 1 or 2 of them in here, know I'm going to say this. That's my grandson Bodhi. And I just think he's adorable, and I can't not show you him. And of course I think he's a star kid. So, how is it we know that this is a reality? I think there's nothing more profound than what children say, because children say it how it is. And anyone who's a parent here knows that for a fact. They may not always have all the words, but they know what they want to say to you, and they're very clear. I don't mind going through the walls, and they teach me more on the ships than I learn at school, was one 5-year-old. This was drawn by a 20-month-old little girl, and the mother came into the bedroom and saw this drawing. "Mummy, I had a visitor last night. A lady came down, she had no hair and no clothes. She took me out of the window and up. And the mother asked who'd drawn the picture, and she said, that's the lady. But she was unable to draw this picture because she only did scribble drawings. So where did it come from?" And now we're getting some really interesting stuff. This is drawn by a 4-year-old child. And the lady that gave this to me said that her son drew it and said, "That's the man that comes and gets me." Notice there's no nose and no mouth, no ears, no hair. And this is another drawing of this is a 4-year-old too. The ship that he said he went on. And he also drew an energy field around it. Now, what child of 4 knows about energy fields? And he said that's where that keeps all the people in, was the way he described it. Now, this is where we get to this very interesting story about 2 children in the same family. Now, I think I told you that this is intergenerational. If you've got the parents having experiences, it's more than likely the children of those parents will have experiences, and on it goes. So there's a genetic link to this. And this is a family all having experiences. And I'd like to share with you the 2 children's version of what they know about their experiences. And this is a little girl, she's I think about 8 now. She drew this when she was a bit younger. I've had this drawing a few years. Now what you can see above her, the drawing is, in fact, the spaceship that she goes on. This up here. And she even pointed out that this was the window she looked